Hello everyone. Today we're going to go over some NX and Teamcenter naming and searching tools you can use. So to get started, I'm actually going to pull up a spreadsheet, or not spreadsheet, a presentation I made. It's in the drive under, if you go to Learning Resources, and then if you go to Guides here, and then NX and Teamcenter, and then it's the first one, PSP CAD and naming. Open that up, and we'll go through this real quick and then show a few examples within Teamcenter and NX. So first off, I'm going to go through how we're going to do naming for Rocket 4. Um, we use this string of alphanumerics. We use that for CMS as well, for both versions of CMS, and that's something we're going to be continuing for Rocket 4. I've seen it in industry, very similar naming convention, with a few digits initially, and then a dash, and then trailing digits. We try our best to pack as much information about whatever file you're opening with this type of convention, although it does sacrifice some human readability. So to make up for that, we're going to go over it and hopefully build up an intuition for you to have when you're going through the file system. You can pick out what you want based on the number instead of needing a name. However, there will be some more typical string-based ways to see what's within a file. So you'll have both options, but for now, let's go over what each one of these specific digits or alphanumerics will mean for us. So to start off with, the first one is L, and that's just to represent liquids. I believe some other teams within Purdue use Teamcenter, like the same Teamcenter overall file management system that we do, and they use the first alphanumeric to separate which team has what files. So L for liquids, that's pretty simple. The next one is where we actually see some changes between file types and file names. The second digit represents what rocket we're working on currently. So for Rocket 4, it's obviously going to be for CMS, which was the third rocket. It was 3. Pretty self-explanatory there. The third digit is something new, or not new actually. It's something that hopefully we won't have to change for Rocket 4, but we have had to change for CMS, so it's possible that that might change. I'm calling it Rocket version. That's the best name I could come up for it. There's probably another better way to describe it out there, but practically speaking, if we change Rocket 4's CAD or design so much so that it warrants starting from scratch and rebuilding it from the ground up, we would change the 0 to a 1. And if we had to do that again, we would change that from a 1 to a 2. For example, for CMS, we initially had a larger airframe than what we do now. It used to be about a 9.5-inch diameter airframe, but then we decided to downsize the vehicle. And during the downsizing process, we changed pretty much all the rocket CAD files from L30 to L31. And that was to help separate what CAD files were what from the first version of the bigger CMS from the second version of the now smaller downsized CMS. So we were still able to reference the older CAD models without having to delete them and keep the same file. So we'll call that Rocket version, and hopefully we'll keep it at L40, but in case we need a big change and start from scratch, that'll be incremented up to 1. Okay, so the next digit, that'll be the fourth one, is going to be used to designate whether the file is for a rocket, whether it's for ground support equipment or GSE, or whether it maybe is a test article. And we can change what these mean, or maybe add more. So if it's You know, if it's let's see, if it's for a practice part for teaching people how to manufacture things and it doesn't fall into one of these three categories, maybe that's a 3. We'll take those as they come, though. For now, we're mostly going to be looking at rocket parts or GSE parts. So that'll be GSE. I'm imagining stuff like if we ever created a updated BCLS, I would say that would go within GSE, although hopefully we keep all the GSE parts using this naming convention under the Rocket 4 umbrella. So if it's a more broad piece of GSE, maybe we break it out from there. But generally, we're going to be using Rocket stuff. And if you want to add in a different type of um, file type or like different component, maybe we should talk about it to figure out which one makes the most sense if it's a little more ambiguous. But yeah, we'll call that what type of system the part is for now. And then 5 and 6 is probably where you're going to see the most amount of action. Those designate the subsystem number. So we have a bunch of different subteams within PSP-Liquids, and each one of those subteams, or most parts of those subteams, have their own set of layout and assembly files. And we'll get it more into those probably in the next video, actually. But for now, the 5th and 6th alphanumeric designate what subsystem your file belongs to, whether it's a lower plumbing part, whether it's a upper airframe part, or a pump part, anything like that. You'll see a change in the numbers here, and we'll go through the list of what the different subsystem names are and their corresponding numbers in the next couple of slides. And then we have this dash here, and that dash is to kind of break up the string, because most of the time you'll either be looking at this half of the number, what I'm calling a number, or this half of the number, and it makes it a bit easier to see. And then on the right half of that dash is going to be the specific part number or file number. There will be certain cases where this part number or file number is significant and it holds a deeper meaning. Other times it'll just be a specific designation for an individual part. And again, we'll go into that more in a little bit, but you'll be able to understand what type of file, what type of thing you're dealing with based on this dash some 3-digit number. Okay, so that's that. Let's get into more of the specifics here. So this is the subsystem number list. This could change. It probably won't change too much, but I would check the Confluence page. If you search up, let's see, actually let's do a live demo. If you search up, I'm going to pull up PSP-Liquids Confluence page. And by default, it takes me to this LOX fill port that I made about 2 years ago. And have not touched since. I should probably change the link for that on my homepage. Let's see. Important CAD important part numbers is where you'll find that list. So there you go. Same list that I have in that spreadsheet or the presentation. It'll have all the Rocket 4 important number, subsystem number names. It also has it for CMS and then other parts. So feel free to reference this. Very important place. Hopefully we'll keep adding to this to the point where it's very easy to find what you're looking for. But back to this. So I'm not going to go through all this. The main ones are the full Rocket 4 full layout and assembly files. All the big top of the umbrella type stuff will be using the 00 subsystem number. So if you go back here, 5 and 6 for the full Rocket 4 will just be 00, as opposed to something like down here, upper airframe is 09. Those are the last 2 digits here are 5 and 6. So 09 is the subsystem number designation for upper airframe. You also have, you also have who owns the system, like what team owns whatever system is correlated to. So there you go. use this as a reference. It should make it pretty easy to, like I said earlier, grow an intuition for what these numbers actually mean. And that'll come with practice. Okay, so I said I was going to go into layout and assembly files. I'm probably going to dodge that question right now and just give you what the numbers mean and explain more about what those types of files and what they're used for, what that means later in another video, like I said. But for now, let's say that the trailing 3 digits that we saw in the name convention, that's associated with whether your file is a layout, an assembly, or just a plain part file. If it ends with -000, that means that your file is a layout file and it's going to be used for modeling. Like I said, I'll go into more depth later. -500 is your assembly files, and that's a lifelike representation of all of your parts for a subsystem assembled together. And then anything else really, and there'll always be some amount of rule breakers here and there, but for the most part, any other number will be part files that store individual part bodies. So if you CAD up a manifold, you'll store that manifold within a part file with a specific name. And the way we get that with a specific number rather. And the way we get that number is starting from 001 and then incrementing up by 1 digit. For CMS, we actually incremented. Yeah, that's the word. We actually incremented up by 2 digits. So it would be -001, and then the next part would be 003, and then so on using the odd numbers. And the way we did that the reason we did that was to save the even numbers for mirrored parts. So let's say you had 2 halves of a payload fairing, if you're designing a real rocket with a payload. And if that geometry is practically mirrored from one side of the payload fairing to the other, you would take all of 1/2 of the parts on the fairing as odd numbers and then the other half as even numbers, and you would just you wouldn't remodel the other half, you would just mirror the first half, and you would store those mirrored parts within even number part file numbers as opposed to odd. So it's just a way to kind of separate mirrored bodies from initial bodies, I suppose. Although I don't think we use it enough to warrant that. I can't really think of many use cases for us specifically. Maybe that'll change, but for now we'll just increment up by 1 and eat the cost down the line if we realize that somehow we're mirroring a lot of parts. So that's that. And let's move on to a few examples. So let's start from the top here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Probably going to hit the interesting ones. But for the first one, L40013-000. If I was clever, I would have done the old teacher trick of having only the numbers show up and then having the actual names show up after I click the slide to give you a chance to answer them yourself. But hopefully it's simple enough and sinking in to the point where you don't really need to do that. But so L40013, I don't expect anybody to really remember the subsystem numbers right off the bat, but L4 means we're talking about rocket 4 for liquids. 0 means we're talking about a part for the rocket. I skipped one actually. Maybe I should review it more. The 0 here means that we're talking about the first version of rocket 4, the one we're working on right now. The second 0 means it's a part for a rocket and not GSE or otherwise. It's a part that will go on a vehicle. And then 1-3 I'm just going to cheat and look here, and it's the battleship pump subsystem. So we're working on a pump with this file, and then the -000 designates a layout file. Cool. All right, let's talk about this one, L40101-500. So L4, like I said earlier, is going to be Rocket 4. 0 means it's the first version, and then 1, as I defined earlier, means it's some sort of GSC equipment, or GSC not equipment, because E is equipment. So some GSC. 01 is, it's the subsystem name for the harbor test stand. I think I either made it up on the spot making this example, or that's actually the way it is in Teamcenter. I forget, but either way, it's the harbor stand subsystem. And then -500 will mean an assembly file. Sometimes sometimes it's also 501 for assembly files and not 500. CMS was 501 for all assembly files. Slight change for Rocket 4 though. Just be mindful. And then let's talk about this one. This will be the last one. L31006-994. So L3 is Rocket 3, which was CMS, and then we have that 1 here. The 1 means we're talking about small CMS after it was downsized. So that was like the second version of the CMS vehicle. And then 0, we're talking about the Rocket. We really didn't use that 0 for CMS. That's a new thing for Rocket 4. And then 06 was for lower plumbing. That's the old subsystem name for lower plumbing. And then -994. I don't know what this part file is. I still don't. It's probably a tube knowing lower plumbing, but the 994 is not a 500 file or a 000 file. It's some random part file. Cool. Okay, let's talk about searching in Teamcenter and NX, because there are a few little tips and tricks that could save you some amount of time. I'm actually going to just remind myself let's actually go through this. So searching in Teamcenter, there's a search box. We'll go over that in a second. That's where you pull up files. And then searching in NX, you go to File and then Open Part File, or like Open File, and then there's a search bar down here that you can type into, just like you would in Teamcenter. I think you can also type in this number field right here, but I always default to the search. Okay, and then this is the important part here. So you can use the asterisk. I'm going to have trouble saying that. My throat's a little sore. You're going to using the asterisks is very useful because it takes the place of a wildcard when you're searching. So what that means, and you'll see a few examples once I pull up Teamcenter, is it will fill in the blank for any digits you either don't want to type or you don't know the specific numbers for. I'll let you read the rest of this for a second here, and then I'm going to pull up Teamcenter and show you a few examples. But it's a very useful tool, and I use it pretty much every time I type into the search bar. So let me pull up. I'm going to actually probably close out of this, but if you want to refer to this again, it's within the PSP-Liquids drive, following that path. Okay, let me pull up Teamcenter. Okay, there we go. Cool. All right, so within Teamcenter here, there you go. I was already using it beforehand. Let's say I want to pull up the lower plumbing file for Rocket 4. I didn't want to bother pulling up the Confluence page with the subsystem numbers, so I don't really know what lower plumbing is. But I do know I'm looking for the lower plumbing file for Rocket 4, so I know a few digits of the file name. I know L for liquids. I know 4. Oh, I know 4. I know it's the first version. I know it's for the rocket, and I don't know the subsystem. But let's say I want to find the layout file for. Well, first off, let's actually just use the asterisks to take the place of 0. I think it's not. I think it's 3 in reality, but it's taking the place of those 2 digits. So let's click search here. Popped up over here. Let me drag it over. Okay, so here we go. We see all of the Rocket 4 L400 files. Note that we don't see any of the GSC files for Rocket 4. Specifically, I think the harbor is on here, but we're not seeing it because it doesn't follow this designated name. But we do see all the other files that have different, 0 or number dash number names. So the asterisk is taking the place of the rest of the name, and we can scroll down through this list and like look for the specific file we're looking for. So let's say we're looking for the lower plumbing layout file. There it is. All we have to do is really look to the right here and look at the more human readable name to confirm. So we can open that up and everything is fine and dandy if we do that. But let's say we're even lazier and we don't want to look through the however many results. And this is valid actually, because there'll be a certain point where we have a bajillion part files for all the different geometry we have within the rocket, and it will be a pain to sort through the whole list of all of them. So let's say you want to avoid that, but you still don't know what the lower plumbing subsystem number is. Well, we can narrow it down if you know what type of file or what type of part number you're looking for. Let's say most of the time you're going to be looking for the layout file, I imagine. That's where you spend the most of your time. So let's say we were looking for the layout file of the lower plumbing. So after this asterisk, I would actually put -000 to represent some more, another few digits of the name that I know for sure that I want to see. So let's press search on that, and it cuts down the list a lot. It'll cut down the list even more actually once we get a lot more files in here, because it'll only show the layout files, and then that'll make it even easier and even faster to pick out your lower plumbing layout file. Okay, cool. And then you can also, just as a side note, you get some more useful information on the search result. You can see, I think the most useful ones are probably date modified would come in handy sometimes to see when the part was updated last, and the checkout status is probably the most important. So you can see if a specific file is checked out by somebody. And briefly, let's peruse into the concept of checking in and out. I'll probably cover this in more depth a little bit later and emphasize its importance. But imagine you have a file, a real paper file back in the 70s. You have a real paper file within a cabinet system in an office. Let's say you wanted to reference that file for whatever officey reasons. You would go to the cabinet, you would take the file, you would effectively check, well, you pull it out of the cabinet, you'd walk back to your desk, and now nobody else can go to that cabinet and pull out the same file because you have it physically in your hands at your desk. And if you make a change to that file, you write on it or use whiteout or what have you, that change is pretty much permanent, right? And you would have to put it back into the cabinet for other people to see that change, and and nobody can make changes. Critically, nobody else can make changes to that file while you have it in your possession. You are the only one who can change that file. This is the concept, practically, of checking in and out files on NX and Teamcenter. It's not the same as GitHub. It's slightly different, or it's a lot different actually. But you check out files when you want to modify them and change them and work on them. You check them in once you're done, and other people can do the same with the same file after, updating or after seeing your changes. But like I said, I'll probably go over that more in depth. It's very important that you are good about checking in files because, like I said, nobody else can change that file unless you do. Unless you bring that piece of paper back to the cabinet, nobody else can see it or nobody else can change it. So actually seeing that status in this search bar, like I can see that somebody has the upper airframe file checked out, so I cannot work on that file until they check it back in. And let's actually pull that up and see who it was. So I have it checked out. So that works out pretty well for me, but maybe not for somebody else. I think that I'll show you briefly that you can do the same searching. I don't have NX open. Let me show you briefly how searching on NX works. It's pretty much the same, but just for, thoroughness, let's do it there. I waited too long for my tea, and now it's growing cold. Mondays. Okay, here we go. Teamcenter is launching up. And then maybe I'll make a video on how to comprehend what is going on with Teamcenter once I actually understand what's going on with Teamcenter's layout, because I don't know what any of this stuff does. All right, Teamcenter or NX is booting up. Okay, so NX is open. So if I want to open a part, I would go to File, Open, or you can press Control O. I don't think I've ever done that in my life, though, on purpose at least. But you can do that, and then I typically go down to the search bar entry field, and then do the same thing. Let's say I want to see CMS's lower plumbing file, L31. I know what the file name is, but I'm going to be lazy and just say star and then dash 500. Let's say I want to see the assembly file actually. So there you go. Pops. That's weird. Okay, maybe there wasn't. I'm gonna change that to the old version of CMS because. Or wait, I actually know exactly why. Like I said earlier, CMS used 501, not 500. I tricked myself. There it is. Okay, there is your. Oh, these are all of your assembly files for CMS 2. So I have to go through and find the one for lower plumbing. And of course, I'm going to make a fool out of myself because there isn't one. Okay, so that's how you search in NX. Okay, cool. I think that's about it. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope this was helpful. Again, there's a slideshow you can reference if you so please. Okay, have a good one.